and the stockings were hung on the table with care in hopes that old St. Nicholas would soon be there, Ricky and Denny anticipating his arrival. It was the night before Christmas, and the boys were saying their prayers. I wonder what they were praying for. We'll see. And what to their wondering eyes should appear but some toys and gifts? Old Santa had been here. Sure enough, old Santa was here. A bicycle for Denny and a tractor for Ricky, plus a lot of other toys. And a train, electric train, around the table. Looks like the boys got a depot, a train depot, a couple trucks, and a train on the track. Looks like Denny and Ricky are making some fun with their toys. Well, here they are. The boys found their way over to Grandma and Grandpa Hammer's house, sitting around the tree looking at the presents, wondering what's enclosed. Now there's two handsome young gentlemen sitting in the rocking chairs. Don't they look studious and real and sharp? Well, this is Christmas for Brad and Linda Hammer. And that little doll bed there that Linda is playing with was made by Grandpa Hammer for her for Christmas. Since then, she has outgrown it and has now given it to Julie Hammer, Rick and Ann's little daughter, and she has it for her dolls. Now, there's a good-looking young gentleman. That's Brad Hammer sitting in the rocking chair at Grandma and Grandpa Hammer's house on Christmas Day. This is a family gathering of the Nyman family at our house on 1915 MacArthur Lane. Reading from left to right is Miriam's mother, her Uncle Lee, Aunt Gus. Sitting on top is Denny. Down on the floor is Ricky, Grandpa Nyman, Miriam, myself, Tack Hammer, and Bert Taylor, Gus's husband, on the far right. This scene of a Christmas tree in a window setting, which was taken up at Kessler Boulevard and Meridian Street, will climax the 1954 Christmas season for this session. The year is 1955. This is a shot of the front of the Speedway Christian Church, the educational unit. Fairly new at this time. This is early spring, Easter. This is another view of the Speedway Christian Church, looking from the educational unit side across the face of the building. The sanctuary entrance is on the far right. The church faces 14th Street and sides on Winton Avenue in Speedway, Indiana. There's my two young men, Denny on the right and Ricky on the left. Looks like Denny has a camera strung around his neck. He's getting ready to take some Easter pictures also. There again, they're standing in front of the educational unit of the Speedway Christian Church. Looks like the church service is over now, and some of the people beginning to file out of the church. We had a good crowd this day. Easter, you know, and big crowds. Here it is Easter Sunday, and we're in the backyard of Grandma and Grandpa Hammer's home on Lyndhurst Drive. That's Grandpa Hammer, my father, with the camera in his hand. He's got his new Keystone cassette 8mm movie camera there, taking some pictures of the kids hunting Easter eggs. The young lady there in the red coat is Carolyn, Don's wife, Carolyn Hammer. There's Dad taking a moving picture of Denny standing out in their side yard on Lyndhurst Drive. Dad's got his 8mm movie camera there on a unipod so he can hold it steady and get good pictures. Here's Ricky. Looks like he's found some candy or an Easter egg there at the base of the tree. This is in the side yard of Grandma and Grandpa's house, Lyndhurst Drive. Here's Miriam with Denny on the right and Ricky on the left. The two boys have their Easter baskets. I can't really tell whether they're full or not, but they'll be full before the day's over. Easter, 1955. Now there's my brother Don and Carolyn, his wife. Easter morning. Don has his Argus C3 camera strung around his neck. Looked like he's been taking pictures also. Here we are in the side yard of Mom and Dad's house. That's Don, Dad, and myself. Easter morning, 1955. Well, that looks like Denny there. Looks like he's found another Easter egg. He may be having to dig a hole to get it out. I don't know, but he's found something there he's anxious to get a hold of. This is Ricky with his bucket. Been out hunting Easter eggs. He's got something in there he's awfully interested in looking at. Hope he gets it full. This is at the back of the lot there at the side of Grandma and Grandpa's house. That's the alley you see in the background. Well, that little tyke there, that's Brad, Don and Carolyn's little boy. Looks like he's found a gold mine there at the base of the tree, too. He's getting it out. This cute little girl is Linda Hammer, Don and Carolyn's daughter. She's also finding some goodies there on the ground. Well, there's part of her family there. Reading from left to right is little Ricky, Miriam, Dad Hammer, and sitting there like a Buddha with his hands over his knees is Denny. This picture here was taken in the living room of Grandma and Grandpa Hammer's house. On the left there is Brad, Denny, Linda, and Ricky. Looks like they all have their Easter baskets full. I can't really say what this is, whether it's breakfast, dinner, or supper. It looks like it might be late in the evening. It could be an evening snack. On the left there is just barely in the picture is Denny, and as usual, men with their mouth open. Little Ricky in the background there, and the shoulder and arm on the right is Carolyn. This is another shot of our two sons, Denny and Ricky, taken in our backyard, 1915 MacArthur Lane, the year 1955. This was still Easter of 1955, taken in our backyard of 1915 MacArthur Lane. Standing in the back on the left is Paul Nyman, Miriam's brother, then Miriam. In front on the left is Denny and Ricky. And these next two shots are a little out of sequence as far as family is concerned, but nevertheless, they were taken down in Brown County on some of the back roads. There was a sports car rally, and these two cars were participants in the sports car rally. This was taken in the early of the spring of 1955. We were out at Gas Reservoir, took the boys out there one day for a little outing, and that's Fred Jones. The little girl was a girl that was playing around there, and she came over and ate lunch with us. I don't really know who she was. She wasn't with our group. And the next little boy is Kenny Jones, Ricky Hammer, and Denny Hammer drinking something there in a mug. I can't recall all the details, but back in 1955, 54, 55, and 56, I think they had a contest depicting the different parks and public places on boats on White River at 30th Street. And this was part of the boat procession going down White River with the signs on them. This is one of the kiddie rides at Riverside Park, which was located at 30th and White River. It's no longer there now. In the back of the first boat here is Denny on the right and Ricky on the left. The other two little boys steering the boat, I don't know who they are. They happen to be in the boat first. This is another shot of the two boys on a kiddie ride, a tank ride at Riverside Park. The two shirts the boys are wearing, Mim made. She was pretty good at making shirts and clothes and dresses. She made those two shirts. This is June the 5th, 1955, Denny's birthday, 7 years old. The kitchen of our home on MacArthur Lane. He sure looks happy for 7. Here we are, June the 24th, June the 24th, 1955. Ricky's birthday, 4 years old, 4 candles. Even Donald Duck looks happy there, got his quacker wide open. That little car on the table there on the left, a 1955 DeSoto, one like Grandpa Hammer used to have. Rick's got one now, an antique he's trying to restore, but he'd sure love to have that little car that he had then. Well, it looks like owning 2 candles, but really if you look close, there are 4 candles on there. And Ricky's all puckered up to blow or kiss. I can't tell which. I think he's trying to blow them out. We're in the birthday season here. I can't tell you what the date is on this, but this is little Brad's birthday. 2 candles on the cake, 2 years old. Left to right, in the red hat, Ricky, Linda, Brad's sister, Denny, and then little Brad. This was taken at Don and Carolyn's house on North Girard. Open wide, here it comes. That's Carolyn, eating a big bite of watermelon. Man, that looks good. These next few pictures were taken in Thelma and Mason's home, around 700 North Arlington, East Indianapolis. Reading from left to right is Ricky with a black hat on. The lady, the little girl, and the next man I can't identify at this time. I don't remember who they were. And that's Denny's down in front with the guitar. Looking over Thelma's shoulder there is Mason and Thelma and Mim. It looks like Mim's pregnant there. I'm sure she was. These were taken at Thelma and Mason's home on North Arlington. Well, here we are on the swing set in Mason and Thelma's backyard. Swinging on the left there is Ricky. Standing in front is Sandy. The little girl on the bar, I can't tell. Denny hanging by his hands. And I can't tell the gentleman in the background. Boy, here's a couple of young cowpokes, I think, sitting on a rail fence, strumming a guitar and listening and with all the intensity. Denny and Ricky at Thelma and Mason's backyard. This is the other little cowpoke. That's Ricky sitting there strumming a guitar on the rail fence at Mason's house. That's Denny. I'm sorry, he's got Ricky's hat on. Now here the little ones are in the wading pool. The little girl that I still can't identify. Denny in the background. Kathy and then Sandy. Kathy and Sandy was Mason and Thelma's 2 little daughters. Well, the scene has changed a little bit now. We've got Mason Garrett there with the guitar, and Kathy, his oldest daughter, sitting there on the settee with him. Here the little ones are in the wading pool again. The little horse, I don't know what his name is, and the little girl, still a blank. Kathy and Sandy in front. Denny and Ricky in the back. I don't know what Ricky's looking at, but he's got his head down. This cute little girl is Sandy. She grew up to be quite a young lady and competed in the Miss Indiana contest. That's Thelma and Mason's youngest daughter. And that was just Ricky. These next 2 or 3 shots were shots taken out at Westwood Country Club at the swimming pool. I can't really identify any of the people in the picture, but we may know some of them, but I can't identify them at this time. Another shot of the Westwood Country Club swimming pool. Really can't identify any of these people either at this time. The year 1955. Looks like they had a pretty good crowd there this day. This is the year 1955, and that's Miriam's aunt and uncle, Augusta Taylor and Bert Taylor. I believe they're sitting in the front yard of Mim's folks' home on North Audubon. These three gentlemen sitting there, on the right, left to right, is Denny, Ricky, and Uncle Bert, again in Grandma and Grandpa Nyman's front yard on Audubon Road. Now there's a nice group family picture. Denny, Aunt Gus, Ricky, and Uncle Bert, the year 1955. This is a picture of Miriam's mother and dad, Alice and Bob Nyman. This shot was taken sometime later of Miriam's mother and dad, Alice and Bob Nyman, in their backyard under their rose trellis. This is in Alice and Bob Nyman's backyard, and that's Aunt Gus and Uncle Bert standing beside some lilies, and the big leaves on the far left side of the frame is Grandpa Nyman's grape arbor.
This picture was taken at 924 North Audubon at Mother and Daddy's home, and are some of the flowers Daddy had in his backyard. I think these are Sweet Williams that he had growing, but we're not sure. This picture was taken at 45 South Gladstone in Aunt Gus's home, and it's a picture of one of her amarilla plants. This is a picture taken in Mother and Daddy's basement, and from left to right there's Dad and Mother Hammer, and I'm there coming up next, and then Mr. Modern, and my father, and the Dickman daughters. They had 3 daughters, and Mother, and Ruth and Jean Dickman, and Mrs. Modern. Oh, I didn't know that. This is in Mother and Daddy's front yard, and these are the Dickman girls, and Jeannie and Alice and Thelma Ann. The next 4 pictures that we'll see are taken at the Coliseum in the Indiana State Fairgrounds, a circus that we went to. This circus was put on by the Shriners here in Indianapolis and is at the State Fairgrounds. This was some of the horses that they used at the circus in the horse barn. This is Mark, taken at the Coleman Hospital in the nursery, and he was born on August the 30th, 1955. Here's another shot of Mark in the nursery. He was the biggest baby I had. He weighed 9 pounds and something, I forget what it was. Had lots of black hair. This is the hospital where Mark was born, the room that I was in. And you can see there where they had taken the polish off of one of my nails, where they checked your finger nails for some reason. These were some of the flowers that I had received while I was in the hospital. This was my roommate and her husband when I was in the hospital. Here's the nurse in my room taking my temperature and my pulse. This is when we left the hospital. This was taken at home when Mark, I think, was about 2 months old. Yeah, he's drooling. Maybe he was cutting teeth, too. This is Mark about the same age, and he's still drooling. Look at those big eyes. This is another one of him. I guess it was maybe he was a little bit older than the other two pictures were. Here's Denny sitting in a chair at our home at 1915 MacArthur Lane. This was taken out at Lake Sullivan on the west side of Indianapolis, which was close to Riverside Park, which is not there anymore. This is taken at Mother and Dad Hammer's basement when we were doing square dancing and taking lessons. Don is in the center of the picture, and Carolyn has her back to us on the very right side of the picture. This was taken the same time of the other picture, and that's Carolyn and Don in the foreground. The next two pictures are Tack working at his drafting board, doing blueprints, making blueprints for Dr. Richard and Norvella Griffith's home on Cunningham now, where they built it. These next two pictures, then, are the finished blueprints of the home that Daddy did for Dick and Norvella. This picture was taken in Christmas 1955 at our home on MacArthur Lane. This is Christmas taken at Grandma Hammer's home in 1955, and that is Rick and Denny, and they're wearing shirts that I had made them. And also there is Brad and Linda, Don and Carolyn's children. This is also taken at Grandma and Grandpa Hammer's home. These are the unwrapped presents that were around the tree. That's Uncle Otto in the background, taken at Mother and Dad Hammer's, and Carolyn showing off her square dancing outfit she had gotten at some time. I don't know just when it was. And Don sitting there by her, taking it all in. This is a cute picture of Mark taken around Christmas time, that first year he was born. He must have been about 4 months old. He shows his big, pretty blue eyes and his dark hair. This is lunchtime for Mark. He could really take the bottle of milk in a hurry. Here's Mother putting all the Christmas food on the table for our Christmas dinner, and there's the big turkey right in the front. This is Mother's sister, Mary, and her husband, Otto Bradford, taken at Mother Hammer's home. This is Christmas time at Aunt Gus's home on 45 South Gladstone. And at the left is Uncle Lee. Then that's me, Rick and Denny, Aunt Gus and Uncle Bert, and I think that's a friend of Uncle Lee's that was there. This is also at the same dinner time. Daddy and Mother and this friend. This is Aunt Gus's house also. This is her spin-up piano with Denny sitting at it. Rick and Denny liked to try to play it, but they really didn't know how. And years later, this burnt up in her fire when she had a fire in her mobile home out by Mother and Daddy. Always hate it. Here's Ricky playing like he's playing a piece on the piano, too. This is Uncle Lee Welker sitting in one of Aunt Gus's chairs in the living room. There is a Christmas tree there behind Uncle Lee's head, a little one.
This is the spring of the year 1956. These next several pictures were taken at Holiday Park, north of Kessler, north of Butler University. On the left is Denny, and on the right is Ricky. Look like they're enjoying themselves sitting there in the green grass. It was tulip time, and the tulips were all in bloom. A wide variety of shapes and colors. The year is 1956, still at Holiday Park. Sitting in front of the tulips there is my family, part of my family. Denny, Ricky, my mother, Anna Kay, and my father, Ganz. This is a good-looking group of kids. On the right is Ricky Hammer, Jerry, and Doug Rosebrock. They were taken out at Westwood Country Club in the spring at a gathering of friends and families. Well, there she is. There's Mim, standing drinking looks like a Coke in front of our 1955 Oldsmobile. A sharp-looking car in those days. Look at the big, wide-striped white wheel tires. Don't see those anymore. This was some of the family and friend group at Westwood Country Club. The two little ones on the left is Ricky and Jerry Rosebrock, the two little children. The gentleman in the back of the car we seem to think was Charlie Eversole. The lady in the red sweater can't identify. There's Mim. The one sitting in the car can't identify. The tall gentleman standing there with his back to us we think is Ted Rosebrock and his wife, can't remember her first name. And the lady standing in the blue slacks and the cap on her hands on her hip, she says, "What's going on here?" We think that is Bernice Allen. This is another shot of the group at Westwood Country Club. Reading left to right is Mim. I can't identify the lady behind her. Bernice Allen in the back of the car there. Ted Rosebrock sitting in the trunk of the car, and his wife. Can't think of her name right now. Ricky Hammer, Jerry, and the gentleman on the far right, his name slips our mind right now at this time. This is a sure sign of spring. That's a red bud twig in bloom there. They're very beautiful up here in the spring of this year. The red bud, the dogwood. This was also at Westwood Country Club, the year 1956. We'd had some very heavy rains during the spring of 1956. This is a shot taken of the dam south of 16th Street on White River. And you can see the water gushing over the dam there and the turbulent waters just below the dam. We have 2 or 3 shots of these, so you can get an idea of what high water looks like on White River. You can see there were quite a few people on the opposite side of the river, up on the dam and down in the lower left there along the shore, watching the water as it rolled on by. You've seen this log cabin before in the winter of 1955 on Lake Sullivan. It was a winter shot. Well, this is spring of 1956. The high water is up and around. You can see it's completely engulfed the cabin. This doesn't happen anymore since the installation of Eagle Creek Reservoir and Dam, which now controls a lot of the flood water and alleviates a lot of these problems. This is a shot taken at Westwood Country Club swimming pool. As you see in the background, we have a little pool back there for young children, and then we have a little tiny wading pool up here for babies. Reading from left to right there is Narvella Griffith. Their little boy just behind her, all you can see is his legs. Then Mark is sitting in the water, and Miriam. Look like they're engrossed in something there. I can't tell what it is that Mark's playing with. This is the junior pool behind the previous scene you saw of Narvella and the kids and Mim. This is a little deeper pool for the little larger children. That's Mark on the left, Denny diving into the water, and the gentleman sitting in the lawn chair up there, can't identify him. That's Ricky on the left there. Looks like he's already dove in and waiting out to start over. What? That's Denny standing in the junior pool there, adjusting his mask. Apparently he's wanting to see what's on the bottom of the pool. This is back in the baby pool now. That's on reading from left to right. Is John Griffith, Narvella, that's her little boy, then Mark, Miriam, and Ricky. We're in the deep pool now, and that's Dr. Griffith and his little son, Richard. Look like Doc's trying to teach him the backstroke. These next group of slides that we're going to show were of a picnics. In fact, two different picnics in the side yard of Mom and Dad Hammer's home on North Lyndhurst Drive. That was a outdoor grill that Dad built from scratch, and we used it quite a bit to grill sandwiches and hamburgers and hot dogs on, even steaks occasionally. Left to right there is Mom and Carolyn preparing lunch for our picnic. I think that's about the best view we've got of the outdoor grill. Mom on the left, Carolyn, Mim, and little Bradley walking up the side there. Well, here we are. Looks like the sandwiches were grilled and we're all sitting around the picnic table ready to dig in. Left to right is Carolyn, Mim, Dad Hammer, Linda, I believe, and then Ricky and Grandma Hammer. Man, don't those steaks look good. Makes me hungry right now. That's Grandma Hammer, turning them over to get them done on both sides. Doesn't that table look good? There's Dad Hammer ready to dig in, and little Linda, she's already into it, and Don on the right. Well, looks like Dad's well into his sandwich now, and Linda's still eating on something there. Don's doing something to his drink, and that's Grandma. You can just see the top of her head over Don's shoulder. Well, as you notice, we've got a funny-looking fence back there. It's in the slide, although the slide looks perfectly good when you look at it by hand. Turn it upside down, and it still is the same way. Okay, anyway, that's a motley-looking crew there. Their tummy's all full after eating. Now they're settling down. That's Ricky in the chair, Brad, Dad Hammer holding Linda, and little Mark in the stroller. Well, we have a newcomer there with the motley crew. Ricky, Brad, Denny standing up in his Superman shirt, Dad sitting there holding little Linda in his lap, and Mark sitting in the stroller. This was after the picnic in the side lot at Grandma and Grandpa Hammer's house, 2021, North Lyndhurst Drive, the year 1956. Okay, here we are, a different time, same place. Another picnic in Grandma and Grandpa's side yard. Carolyn tending the grill and Mim pouring the drinks on the right. Well, here we are, sitting down to the table, getting ready to fill our tummies up. In the background on the left there is Carolyn, still tending at the grill. Standing at the table there is Aunt Mary, Uncle Otto, my dad, my mother, and my brother Don, all gathered around the picnic table for a big feast. Now that's a good picture of my dad, sitting in the lounge chair in the side yard. He was a good-looking man, about like me. Ha ha. Well, now let me think about this a minute. It looks like what Dad might be thinking sitting there. He's relaxed, looks like he's got a smile on his face. He's happy about something. Well, this is a group shot of the children at the picnic. On the left there is Denny. The bigger girl sitting there is Judy McKnight, my cousin, Brad, Ricky, and Linda. Well, here they are, all seated around the picnic table. Carolyn, Uncle Otto, Dad, Mom, Denny, Mim, Don, and Aunt Mary. And that looks like a big box of chesty potato chips sitting there on the side of the table. Makes me hungry just looking at that table. Here we are celebrating a birthday and having a picnic also. The time, 1956. The birthday, Denny Hammer, 8 years old. The place, Marion County Fish and Game, just west of Speedway. Sitting on the front row there, left to right, is Ricky, Denny holding his package and he can't wait to open it, Brad, Linda, and Mark in the stroller. In the background seated there is Uncle Don, my brother, Dad, Mom, Miriam, and Carolyn, all ready to celebrate the 8th birthday of Denny Hammer, 1956. And there's Denny. He's lighting his candles on his birthday cake. That looks like a chocolate cake. Looks good. Carolyn, our memory, and Mim in the background. This was taken in our backyard at 1915 MacArthur Lane. Denny's birthday. Looks like he's got him a new fishing pole there he's trying out. Now, this is a shot of my mom and my dad, Ganz and Anna K. Hammer, taken in their side yard at 2021 North Lyndhurst Drive. The big tree in the background there is a Colorado spruce, one that we had for Christmas in the house one year. We always got potted ones so we could set them out and make use of them, and that's how big it is now. Well, there's my 1955 Oldsmobile, sitting in the front drive at 1915 MacArthur Lane. That house behind the car there, the yellowish one, was Mary and Charlie Eversoles, our neighbor. I'm getting rid of that car, so I took the last picture of it. The next slide you see will be our new car, a 1956 Ford station wagon. My first new car. Well, there it is, my first new car, a 1956 Ford station wagon. Sharp-looking buggy. The license plate on the front of it there was an Indiana State Guard reserve plate. I happened to be active in the Indiana State Guard at the time. Here we are celebrating Bradley Hammer's birthday. Birthday number 2. This was taken in their home on North Girard. The year 1956. Well, here we are, another birthday. This is Mark's birthday, his first birthday cake. And this was in our kitchen at 1915 MacArthur Lane, the year 1956. Well, there's little Mark sitting on the living room floor. Looked like he's having a good time. Looks like maybe the family was there. I can't tell them from this view, but that's Mark, 1915 MacArthur Lane. The position Mark is sitting there is his usual position. Mark never crawled on his hands and knees. He would always sit like that and take that left leg and push him and scoot all across the floor. So he was scooting there. Well, it looks like Mark beat us all to the telephone. He answered it. Now he's handing the phone off to someone else. Looks like Mark's saying, how am I supposed to eat when that big bum's always time taking my picture? Now look here, if it's that good, why don't you eat it? Well, it was pretty good, Mommy. Look at my tummy. I'll eat just about anything, but this is ridiculous. And I ate the whole thing. Well, I'm ready for bed. But this sure doesn't look like it. Bye-bye, Mommy. I'm off to bed. That's little Mark, 1956, and Miriam. Well, Mark will eventually get in bed. There he is, taking one of his little howdy-doody circus books to bed with him. Well, there are my 3 sons, Ricky, Mark, and Denny, sitting in front of our TV set watching a movie or something. If you look hard, you can make out some images on the TV screen. And there's the mother of my 3 sons. That's Miriam. The year 1956. there's Mim, little Mark, Ricky in his Davy Crockett shirt, and Grandma Hammer, sitting in our living room at 1915 MacArthur Lane. There's a front view of my three sons, Ricky, Mark, and Denny. What a smile on Denny's face. Denny and Ricky are both in their Davy Crockett shirts there. Looks like Mark is pinching little Ricky on the cheek. Well, that's a portrait of Denny, my older son. The year 1956. Yeah, that's another shirt that Miriam made for the boys. Denny's wearing his there. And that's a portrait of my number 2 son, Ricky, the year 1956. Well, that's Denny, reading a book on pitching, baseball. He was interested in baseball that year, 1956. This is a picture of Mary Ann Nyman and Renee, her little daughter. Mary Ann was the wife of Paul Nyman, Miriam's brother, her younger brother. And this is the other half of their family. That's Dale, Paul, Miriam's brother, and the little girl is Colleen. The year 1956. It looks like everybody got up and went home. This is a corner of our living room, 1915 MacArthur Lane. Well, this is the fall of 1956, and that's my dad standing there looking at the maple tree in color.
This is Mark and I on a stroll at McCormick's Creek Canyon State Park. This is our 1956 Ford station wagon, and behind it is Uncle Don's Buick. This is Dad Hammer and Don taking a nap in the front of Uncle Don's car. Looks like something must have woke them up. They're stirring a little bit. This looks like it's also at McCormick's Creek Park, and we're having a picnic. There's me with my back to the camera, and Mark, Mother Hammer, Carolyn, and Denny. This is 1915 MacArthur Lane. We evidently had a family dinner. And this is Grandpa Nyman, Grandma Nyman, Aunt Gus, Mother Hammer, Steve, Denny, Uncle Bert, myself, Ricky, Mark, and then Ricky, and Brad, Dad Hammer, Don, Linda, and Carolyn.
The year's 1956, and this was our vacation to northern Wisconsin, to Found Lake, Ballard's Resort. This was one of the cottages we had, and that's Don's Buick parked there, and that's little Brad walking in front of the cottage. This was Ballard's home there on Found Lake, down just a little ways from where our cottage was. They had a nice home there. This was a little honeymoon cottage, kind of set off by itself at one end of the resort. We stayed in there one time during one of the vacations. Nice, cozy little place, right on the lake. Well, it looks like the kids have found something to have a good time on. That's Denny at the foot of the slide, Linda at the top of the slide, and little Ricky coming up the ladder behind Linda. It looks like we got a traffic jam here on the slide. Ricky stopped mid-slide, wouldn't let Linda get past him, and Denny's standing at the top waiting for his turn. This looks like a lazy afternoon at the lake. Little Brad there talking to Carolyn and Mim sitting in the lounge chairs, taking it easy. Well, here are my two older sons, Denny on the left and Ricky on the right, walking the sand gravel road leading into the resort. I don't know where they're headed for, but they're headed for someplace. Here we are at the water's edge with her pants rolled up to her knees and wading in the water. That's Ricky and Denny. Ricky on the left, or on the right, I'm sorry. This was one of the night raids that we had every night there beside our cottage. The raccoon would come in, pop the lid off of the garbage can, and scavenge for something to eat. We had a lot of fun watching him. This is another shot of the little bandit. You can see the mask across his eyes. He's either had his fill or he's got something there in his mouth. He's going to take it off and eat. This was the inside of the cottage. Real nice kitchen, nice rooms. They were really nice and comfortable. All the necessities. That's Miriam on the left and Denny drinking a cold glass of good, fresh northern water. Here's some of the guests of the resort, spending a lazy afternoon at the beach, soaking up the sun. I don't know who they are, other than the gentleman on the left standing is Mr. Ballard, the owner of the resort. Well, here's our three fishermen out to get supper for us. Denny, Linda, and Ricky, heading for a little lake someplace. There are a number of them up there, or else they were just out for a walk. But anyway, they were going fishing. Boy, now there's a good string of panfish, bluegills, nice eating bluegills. That's Ricky holding them. I don't know whether he caught some of them or not, but he sure is happy they're holding them. Or that's Denny. I'm sorry. Thought that was Ricky. I was looking at the fish. I'm going to get it right this time. This is Ricky holding the fish there now. We had to take turns holding the fish up and having her pictures taken. Here's our family in the lake, wading. Carolyn, little Brad, he's not quite sure whether or not he likes this water. Miriam and Ricky, having a good time splashing around in the water. This is just another shot of the foursome at water's edge on Found Lake in northern Wisconsin. This was taken out in front of the little honeymoon cottage. That's my Oldsmobile sitting up there in the drive. The beach was deserted at this time. There's two mermaids out in the water. Look out, don't get your pants wet. That's Miriam on the left and Carolyn. Now that's a good view, especially of a mermaid. I think she had been out too far and got her pants wet. She was turning around and showing me. She got the seat of her pants wet. Well, the day's over and we're all in the cottage now, sitting around the table. Looks like dinner's over and they all gathered there for a picture taking. Reading from left to right, that's my dad, Dad Hammer, Ricky, Carolyn, Mim, Linda, Don, Brad, Denny, myself, and my mother sitting in the wingback chair there. This is a bunch of people down at the beach, soaking up the sun. I don't know who they were. They were other guests there at the resort. A little boy there on the air float coming out is Denny. He's paddling his way out, running his way out on the float out towards me. This is another shot of the same group at the beach. That's Denny pushing the air raft in there with a little boy sitting on it. Don't know who he is, but Denny's pushing him ashore. Here we are, relaxing on the beach, soaking up some sun. Little Brad, Carolyn, Mim, and Ricky. Looked like Ricky's starting to make a sandcastle there. This is a view looking back towards the beach and Honeymoon Cottage, and that's Mr. Ballard there in the rowboat. This is a nice, peaceful setting. That's Mim leaning back against one of the white birch trees along the shore of Found Lake. There's Denny, my fisherman, sitting on the bench with his pole in his hand and the line out, just barely touching the water. Here's three bathing beauties on the beach. Little Linda, Carolyn, and Mim. Look like they're having a good time sitting there. What more peaceful setting could a person ask for than a setting like this on Found Lake in northern Wisconsin? The year 1956. This was taken from a boat out in the lake looking back towards the beach and Honeymoon Cottage. Some of the guests were out on the floating raft and others on the beach enjoying themselves. It looks like two ambitious fishermen. Denny laying back there with a cane pole propped up against his knees, and a little friend he made acquaintance with there at the resort. Now that's my dad sitting in the boat, making some final adjustments on the old Johnson 3-horse outboard engine that we had with us. That happened to be our engine, and I still have it in cold storage here at home. The year was 1956. Now, this is a backlit shot of Dad still tinkering with the engine at the dockside. Yeah, that's my number one son, Denny, out on the end of the dock, casting his plug out in the water in hopes of landing a big fish. You notice the lack of speedboats and water skiers on the lake. This was 1956, and there weren't very many speedboats and skiers out at that time. Well, that's Ricky and Dad in the fishing boat, underway, heading across the lake to a good fishing hole. Now that's what you call a good catch. Linda sitting in the boat, Denny, Dad, and Don. A good catch of bluegills, crappie, and bass. Boy, will we eat good tonight. This was one of the side trips we took while we were up to Found Lake. And this trip was up to Lake Superior and the Porcupine Mountains. Also, there in the Porcupine Mountains was Lake of the Clouds. You'll see those pictures in a minute. Here we are on the side of the mountain there at Lake of the Clouds, down there below. That's Denny, Ricky, and Mim sitting in there taking in the countryside. This is a side view of the bluff that Mim and the two boys were sitting on looking at the lake. I walked down the side a little ways and was able to get this shot. They had backed off of the point up there where they were sitting, but it provides you a beautiful view of Lake of the Clouds and the countryside and the mountain ranges. This is a scene taken at Lake Superior along the sandy coast there at Porcupine Mountain Park. That's Miriam sitting in front of the driftwood. A beautiful shot of her in the driftwood in the lake. This is a shot taken from the same point. That's Denny, Miriam, Mom just behind the tree there, and Carolyn on the far right, beachcombing, hunting for pretty rocks and shells. This is a motley-looking crew. That's yours truly, Ricky, Denny. He's hamming it up there with an apple and some kind of a can of something. And Miriam, Lake Superior, 1956. This was a shot of a deer in Weber's Wildlife Park, just south of Sainer on Highway 155. Don and Carolyn, my brother and his wife and family, eventually bought a resort on Plum Lake there at Sainer, and moved up there permanently as Wisconsin residents, and they run the resort for a number of years. That was a cute little cub black bear they had there in the park. He had a collar on and had a chain to a tree there, so he couldn't get away, and he would let you pet him, but if you roughed him up, he would scratch and bite. Some years later, the TV program Gentle Ben, the big black bear that followed everybody around and was so likable, he came from Weber's Wildlife Park here in Wisconsin and made a big hit in the movies. It looks like we have a love affair going here. Denny laying his head over and hugging a white-tailed deer. And that's her little fawn in the background there. Well, this concludes the 1956 vacation in Wisconsin. Now, this is yours truly sitting there with a 16-gauge single-barrel, single-shot shotgun. Mason Garrett and I were on a squirrel hunting trip down in Morgan Monroe State Park, State Forest, Indiana, the year 1956. Now that's Mason sitting there, hand on cheek. We were just getting ready to start out through the woods hunting squirrels. Don't recall whether we ever got any or not, but we had a good time that day. This was the beginning of a 1956 hunting trip, deer hunting trip, to the UP of Michigan. We were headed back up into the Huron Mountains and Keenewenaw Peninsula, way back up in there. As you can see, we had quite a bit of snow on the ground, and it was even snowing at the time I took the picture. Camp hadn't been set up yet, but you will see it in a minute. This is another snow scene along the road back up into the Huron Mountains. No other hunters or campers up in the area where we were. We were up there all alone. In fact, it was about 20 miles to the nearest settlement. Well, there was our camp set up. We had an 8x10 wall tent for a cook tent, and we had a 16x16 Army squad tent that we lived in. There were 4 of us on this trip. 1, 2, 3, 4. 5 of us. I'm sorry, there were 5 of us on this trip. The snow was pretty deep, as you can see there by the tracks leading back into where we set up in the mountains. Now, this is a little better shot of our setup. You can see our 16x16 squad tent there with the Canadian flag on it. Bob Irwin, one of the fellows on the hunting trip, served in the Canadian Army. And every time, for 2 or 3 years that we made hunting trips together, whenever camp was set up, he'd put the Canadian flag up. That's our cook tent on the right. That's Bob Irwin coming out of the squad tent there. He was the one that was in the Canadian Army. There's a thermometer on the left of him there on the post. You will see in the next slide. You get an idea there, too, how deep the snow was around our camp. There's the thermometer that I mentioned next to the entrance into the squad tent. That particular morning, the temperature was 6 degrees above zero. We kept plenty warm, though. We had a kerosene heater stove inside the squad tent with a big flue out the top, and it was really real comfortable in there. Another view of our camp setup, all the conveniences of home, believe it or not. About 20 yards behind our squad tent was this stream coming down out of the mountains. Cool, clear, cold water, and that's where we got all of our water from to eat, drink, cook with, and other things. Another shot of the mountain stream coming down behind our camp. This was the trail back in off of the old logging road. This didn't happen to be a logging road here, but it was the trail that we used to get back off of the logging road back into our camp. You can see how deep the snow was. We did have a little difficulty getting out when we broke camp, but we made it with no serious problems. This was the young fella that went with us on the hunting trip. He worked in processing, and for the life of me right now, I can't remember his name. That's been a few years back, but he had a good time nevertheless. This gentleman standing here was Mert Warner. He was out of receiving inspection at Plant 5, Allison's. He also made the trip with us that year, and we had a good time with him. There's Mert. He spotted something across the creek. I don't think he got it. Don't think he even shot, but he saw something. There's yours truly, standing along the creek there holding a 30-06 Enfield. Well, this was Mason Garrett, utilizing all the conveniences we didn't have at home. Well, the sun finally came out, the snow quit falling, the snow melted off of the top of the tent. A beautiful day, a nice setting for a hunting trip. This ends the 1956 hunting trip. Well, here it is, Christmas again. The year 1956. Christmas at 1915 MacArthur Lane. It looks like Santa Claus has already been here. Mark's sitting on the floor there among some of his toys and some of the things the boys got for Christmas. Telephone, little cars, roller skates, books, chalkboards, dolls, games, tinker toys. Here we are over at Grandma and Grandpa Hammer's house, and that's Grandpa sitting there with little Mark on his knee, telling him a story. Well, there's a cute little bunch of kids. In the background there is Brad, Ricky, and Linda, and Mark sitting in a picnic basket. I don't think he could get in that basket now. This is Brad, Linda, and Danny playing with one of the games they got at Christmas time. Well, that's Ricky instead of Denny. It looks like Mim's getting all dressed up and primped up here, getting ready to go someplace. She's really getting ready for this next group picture that we were taking. Well, here's our group picture, family picture. That's Dad on the left, Don, Carolyn, Linda, Rick, Brad, Denny down in front, and then in back is Ricky, little Mark, Mim, Mrs. Bennett, Carolyn's mother, and Grandma Hammer, Anna Kay. Well, there it is, the night before Christmas, 1956, Grandma and Grandpa Hammer's house, 2021 North Lyndhurst Drive, Speedway. And this was before Christmas Day at Don and Carolyn's house on North Girard. This was a nativity scene, Christmas scene. I believe it was at Don and Carolyn's house. Now, these next four scenes are some Christmas scenic shots around town. Can't really decide exactly where this shot was taken from, whether it was taken up in Meadowwood or around in Cunningham Park Addition. This scene here was on Main Street, just north of 10th Street. The building was the old freezer locker building on Main Street. This is a Christmas shot of the Speedway Town Hall at 15th and Lyndhurst Drive. You can see the fire truck sitting in the garage there. Now that has been changed over now, remodeled into office area. This is another shot of the Speedway Town Hall, all decorated up for Christmas. Well, here it is, the year 1957, Easter time. And there's the family out in the backyard of 1915 MacArthur Lane. Ricky on the left, Mim, Mark in front, and Denny on the right. Did you ever see a lovelier family? I haven't. The two little boys there are getting an early start on hunting Easter eggs in the backyard. That's Mark in front and Bradley in back. Don and Carolyn's little boy, Brad. There's Ricky. He's found him an Easter egg and putting it in his basket. Looks like there might be another egg or two in his basket. That little yellow jacket he's wearing and his hat, he was real proud and real dressed up in that. Nice-looking young man. This Easter egg hunt was being done over in Grandma and Grandpa Hammer's backyard. Here they are, all out in front of Grandma and Grandpa's house on Lyndhurst Drive. On the left is Denny, Carolyn, Mim, Brad, and Grandma Hammer. Now, Lyndhurst Drive there wasn't improved like it is now. It's just a blacktop drive street there now. Well, there's Mim and Mark with his basket. I don't know whether they're having a tug of war over that or what. I guess I'll never know. It looks like Mark had an accident with his basket. He spilt some out on the ground there, and looks like Mim's coming to his aid to help him. Well, this is Denny on the left, Mim, Mark, and Ricky. Looked like Ricky's the only one ready there for standing at attention. It looked like Ricky had an accident, or Mark had an accident and fell down again, spilling some of his stuff. That's Mim standing there beside him, and my dad, Grandpa Hammer, in front of the garage there taking some movies. Now that's a picture of our 1956 Ford station wagon. Real happy with that car. First new car I ever owned. This is taken after Easter now. We were up at Holiday Park, north of Butler University, and that's Mim holding Mark. You can see there I believe that's a dogwood, white dogwood in bloom behind Mim. This was a rose bush in bloom at Holiday Park. Thought it would make a nice picture. This is a picture of the front of our house at 1915 MacArthur Lane. This is a picture of part of our backyard on MacArthur Lane. This is another shot of the rose garden that Mom and Dad had at their house on Lyndhurst Drive. This is a picture, in fact, the next several pictures will be of our backyard at 1915 MacArthur Lane. The swing set the boys played on, the bird bath, and the Rose of Sharon in full bloom. The Rose of Sharon were across the back of the lot next to the property line. This again is a shot of our backyard on MacArthur Lane, and that's Mim holding Mark in her arms there. These flowers were some that we grew in our garden there at the back of the lot in front of the Rose of Sharon. Those are lilies and iris. These were some zinnias that we had planted in the planter around the patio off of the back of the garage at our home on 1915 MacArthur Lane. Well, there's Mark playing with his wheelbarrow in the backyard. The bird bath was made by Mim's brother, Paul Nyman. I believe he made it in school. And they didn't use it, so they gave it to us, and we put it in our backyard in front of our flower beds. The year's 1957. Well, it looks like he finally got the wheelbarrow upright, and it's well underway, but I don't see any load in it. Well, it looks like Mark's also wondering where the load is. He can't find anything in the wheelbarrow. Well, there's no load underneath the wheelbarrow either. Well, he's had that wheelbarrow every way but inside out, and he still can't find anything in it. Aha, he finally decided to put a load in the wheelbarrow himself. It looks like he's tipping it over. This is Mim's Aunt Dovey and her Uncle Charlie from Washington. The year 1956, or 1957. I got a correction to make on that. Dovey was Mim's cousin, not her aunt, and the year was 1957. The year's 1957, and that's Denny playing first base on Little League Baseball at Allison School, 22nd and Lyndhurst Drive. This is another shot of Denny playing first base on Little League Baseball. This is a nice sunny day. We had gone down the southern part of the state to a lake, and right now I can't recall which lake it was. But that's Mark, Mim, and Ricky on the beach. This is another shot of Mark, Mim, and Ricky at the lake. I still can't think of the name of that lake. Now that's my mother and dad sitting down there at the lake. That's a good shot of both of them. The year was 1957 that this picture was taken. This was a picture of George Owens and his runabout speedboat. George worked at Allison with us, Plant 5, and lived on West 16th Street here. This is George and his wife in the boat, getting ready to take...
This is some of Daddy's flowers on Audubon Road, and that's Springer's home in the background. Warren and Marjorie Springer lived there. There comes the furnace. This is also some of Daddy's flowers in the garden, and that's Warren and Marjorie Springer's home in the background. And Marjorie was Dwight Schuster's sister, and Ann and Dwight were very good friends of mine. Ann sang in our wedding. These are some amaryllis that I think they're amaryllis. They look like it, that Daddy had out in his yard. There's a close-up shot of the same amaryllis. These are some more of the amaryllis, and they're grown from bulbs that you have to take in and keep in the winter, and you can bring them back out in the summer. This is a picture of me standing by Daddy's and Mother's rose arbor. I'm not sure what kind of roses he had growing there. This is another shot of the rose arbor out in the backyard. In the front row is Denny and then Ricky, and then behind them is Mother and Daddy and myself with Mark and Aunt Gus and Uncle Bert taken in my parents' backyard. 1957.
This is a group picture of the Indian guide that Denny happened to be in at the time. And reading from left to right is Bill Ray kneeling there. Behind him is Mr. Lavender and his son, and I can't remember his name. Kneeling down there is Howard Allen and his son, John. Then comes the boys is Denny. Can't think of the other boy's name. Kenny Jones, Doug Rosebrock, and Ronnie Ray. The gentleman and behind Ronnie there is Ted Rosebrock. The other gentleman there, I can't remember his name at this time. I'm not mistaken. If my memory serves me right, this picture was taken at the Shades State Park.
This is in the living room of our home on MacArthur Lane. Yes, on MacArthur Lane, and it was Mark's second birthday on August the 30th, 1957. That's Denny and Mark and Ricky. This is Mark again with some of the toys that he got for his birthday. This is another birthday shot of Mark sitting in his high chair. This is a picture of Uncle Bert. He was always clowning up for us, and he had a hat on there and a pair of glasses and a big nose. Yeah, there's Uncle Bert again, all dressed up, and he's got a partner with him this time, and Ricky's got a hat on too. This is Denny and Grandpa eating watermelon. Looks like they're sure enjoying it, and Grandpa's taking a big bite of watermelon. This was Denny on his 9th birthday in Mother and Dad Hammer's backyard. Side yard, I guess you'd say it was. And he's got one of the shirts on that I used to make for him. This was his hammer shirt. Had all kinds of hammers and tools and things on them. They all four had them, Daddy and Rick and Mark and Denny. This is a fall picture of 1957 taken over at our church here in Speedway. And these are the trees that were out in front. Since then, they have been cut down, and new trees have been planted in their place. They got so terribly big, finally. This is Thanksgiving Day at our home on MacArthur Lane, and that's the big turkey sitting there on the stove waiting for us to eat. This is also Thanksgiving Day, and this is a table setting for our Thanksgiving dinner, and the turkey's there in the center. And I'm not sure who all was there, but you can see name tags with Aunt Gus and Uncle Bert's name on it, so they were part of the guests, I know. I'm not sure just when this was taken, but it was a meal that we had no doubt eaten at Aunt Gus's, and that's Aunt Gus and I doing the dishes. This is taken on MacArthur Lane, and that's Aunt Carolyn talking on the telephone in the background. And then Rick, and it was Rick's birthday. And these were out of order from the rest of the pictures. We should have had them up there right after Denny's birthday. But that's Rick and Mark and Kenny, or Tommy, Kenny, Linda, and then that's Ricky's cake in the foreground. This is Rick's birthday again, and this is Tommy, Kenny, and Mark, and Ricky, and Linda. Here's Ricky blowing out the 9 candles on his cake. I think he made it, too. This was Christmas 1957 at 1915 MacArthur Lane, and that was a cardboard fireplace that we had mounted in our living room. There are some stencils on the mirror behind it that I guess we had put up, and the stockings were hung waiting for Santa Claus to come. This is the end of our 1957 Christmas pictures, but we're going to go back and show you our vacation in 1957 and also Daddy's hunting trip in 1957.
The year is 1957, and we've headed north to Wisconsin again, up to Montophel's Highland Forest Resort on Found Lake. Those two young gentlemen is Denny and Ricky at water's edge, beginning to play in the water. That's Ricky sitting on the bank out in front of the cottage, soaking up some sun, anticipating getting into the water and catching a few fish. This is a peaceful view, looking out from the front of the cottage to the swimming raft and the shore on the far side of the lake. This is a view looking down from the front of our cottage, down the shoreline to the beach, the pier and all. This is the end of the first day of our vacation in northern Wisconsin, and the sun begins to set. Well, this is the start of a new day, and it looks like Mark and Mim have found something to play with in the sandbox. This was Mark's first year up in Wisconsin. Our vacation last year, he stayed with Grandma and Grandpa Nyman while the rest of our family went to Wisconsin on vacation. But he's with us this year. Well, the silhouettes that we have here is Mark playing in the sandbox, and that's Mim swinging in the swing in the background. There's my 3 sons out in front of the cottage the folks has had. That is Ricky pointing on the right, trying to show Denny and then Mark something to look at. Hope they can find it. The boys look like they're having fun on the slide. From the left, that's Ricky at the top of the slide. Brad is on his way down. At the bottom of the slide is Denny and Mark. If they don't get out of the way soon, Brad's going to slam right into them. It looks like Denny and Ricky have got their fishing poles over their shoulder and heading out to catch some supper. Boy, you work hard to get a shot like this, and then when you get it, it's so little you can't hardly see it. But right in the center of the picture there is a frog. The kids had been hunting frogs, and there he was. These three girls are sitting down on the beach, taking in the view across the lake. Linda, Carolyn, and Mim. You may have seen this picture before because we had it out of order in the 1956 vacation group. It really belongs in the 50s. Here we are on the beach. Left to right is Linda, Carolyn, Brad, Mom, Denny in the background, and then Mim. Same place, same group, except for Brad. Linda, Carolyn, Mim, and Mom behind. There must have been something going on out in the lake. Everyone's looking that direction. Linda, Carolyn, Brad, Mom, Mim, and Ricky in the life vest. Mark's trying to empty the lake. He's got a pail full of water there heading up toward shore. Rick in the background and Denny standing there in the water. I cut the top of his head off. The year was 1957. That's Grandma and Ricky. Grandma must be telling a fish story, and Ricky, he's not too interested. He'd rather make his sand castle. That's Bradley, Don and Carolyn's little boy, digging a sand castle there. The year was 1957. Look, Mom, I dug a hole with some water in it, and I'm standing in it. Yeah, and I'm about to lose my pants. It seemed like that's what Mark liked to do best. Dig a hole, take his pail, get it full of water, and pour it in the hole to make his own little lake. Boy, at the rate he's pouring water out of the lake and into his lake, it won't be long till Fountain Lake will be dry. Mother solved that problem, though. She dug a trench so the water will drain back into the lake. Caught in the act. Mark fills it up, and Mother drains it out. Now, I'm going to keep dipping until this lake gets dry. Looks like Mother had to come to the rescue and help him. This is my last bucket, Mommy. Give me a hand, it's getting heavy. I can't really identify any of them in this picture, but these were some of the guests at the resort, enjoying the swimming area, the float, and the beach. That's a group of the resort guests out on the float, having a lot of fun playing on the float and in the water. Looks like some storm clouds coming in there over the far horizon. You may not be able to recognize him, but that's Denny running and jumping off the float into the lake. In the foreground there is Ricky standing there. I can't tell, he's pointing at something with his hand out. Brad sitting on the blanket, Grandma Hammer, Carolyn, and Linda. It looks like a lot of the guests were out in the lake and on the raft. Sitting on the beach here and pretty much of a silhouette to us. We're going to try to do something different here and insert a pointer in here to the different ones. That's Mim, Mark, Denny, Linda, Grandma Hammer, and Carolyn. Here we are looking at Honeymoon Cottage on the west end of the resort. And as the sun begins to set and the light begins to dim, we'll close for one day and start anew tomorrow. Well, this is the start of a new day, and as the sun comes up in the east and things get a little bit brighter, we'll head off for another fishing trip and try to get something for supper. Now, that looks like Don and Carolyn out in the boat fishing. Looks like Don's got a big cane pole out there. Hope they catch something. This summer of 1957, Uncle Roy and Aunt Lavina was also up there at Montoffel's resort with us. And that's Uncle Roy and Aunt Lavina out in the fishing boat out there. This was another little lake right off of Found Lake where we were staying. This lake was called Shannon. Oh, maybe a quarter to a half a mile. Good little bass lake. We used to like go over there at night and fish the shoreline for bass. Caught quite a few nice ones out of there, too. This is another view of Shannon Lake. It was a pretty lake. Some bears around that country, too, that you can encounter awfully easy. This was another little lake just adjacent to Found Lake. Really, it was a swamp that the beavers had dammed up and created a small lake. It was called Beaver Lake. Had a lot of bass in there, but they were all stunted, about 6, 7, 8 inches long. But we had a ball back there fly fishing for them. Almost every cast you could pull one in. This was the entrance into Beaver Lake. It was just a little pond of water there and then a channel that the beavers kept open. You couldn't row or motor back in there. You'd have to push your way through the channel. It was just wide enough in spots for the boat to go through. That's Ricky and Dad standing there. On one of the trips back there, Dad, Ricky, and Denny were fishing, and Denny was casting a plug. He cast it out, and as soon as it hit the water, he caught a fish. Well, when they pulled the fish in, the fish hadn't bitten on the plug at all. The plug hit the fish in the side of the head and hooked him on the side, and they pulled him in that way. This is just a picture of the entrance there. You can see the water channels going back that we had to pull the canoe or the fishing boat back into. Really, it was a swamp made into a lake by the beavers. And I think that's pretty evident in this picture here as to what the lake looked like. This is a scene in the big cottage that my folks had, and that's Miriam, Carolyn, and Mom standing there at the range cooking fish. Boy, are we going to have a big fish meal. Did I say we were going to have fish for supper? Look at the fish on that. The week we were up there, Mr. Montoffel started building a new guest cottage there at the resort, and that's Mr. Montoffel on the right, or on the left, and a helper there on the right. Dad got interested in their construction out there, and so he went out and helped him for about 2 or 3 days of his vacation to get the cottage started on framing and all. Well, this is nearing the end of our vacation in northern Wisconsin, the year 1957. Last look at the beach before we get ready to take off. In the background there is Ricky, Linda, Uncle Don, and Brad. So long for the vacation for 1957. Now then, we'll enter into a new role and hunting of 1957.